calling all misfits, rebels, leaders, and teachers, welcome to the one place where the only way to fit in is by standing out, where big goals are met with even bigger action, and where we talk through, then tackle all things entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Kelsey, and this is the Get Shit Done podcast. Welcome to the Rebel-ution. I'm so pumped for this episode. Not only are we talking about money, which you all know is a huge interest of mine, but I'm joined by my friend Stephanie, an incredible human, someone who's super authentic, genuine, not afraid to ruffle some feathers, and we're here to serve up some truth, honesty, and raw mental stuff that comes up with money. I feel like we just need to peel back the curtain and talk about it. Ideally, you walk away with some tips, tricks, resources, confidence, and whatever else we get into. But without further ado, Steph, can you say hello to the people and give a quick little backstory?
I'm so excited. I'm Steph. I'm a retired rocket scientist. I retired in 2018 and started my business with the only purpose to help as many other women as possible reach financial independence. I'm here talking to women about money every day.
It's so cool. And I think you're the epitome of you live your purpose out loud. Like you do it in your own way, your own flair, and it's really cool to witness. But because of that, it's not for everybody, and that's okay. And I want to say that because I'm not for everybody either. And I think sometimes we see money, and we got some hater comments, Stephanie, and it's because I think there's options for people and they don't know the pros and cons of all of them. So I feel like we do a little due diligence. For those that don't know, like, what does financial independence mean? Give a couple definitions. What's like an advisor versus a coach? If we could just lay the groundwork now to get that out of the way, because the truth is there's more options than you think. Go ahead.
And I love to keep it a little spicy. Honestly, if you're
Yes.
not ruffling feathers, it's like you're doing something wrong, right?
Agreed.
Because there's going to be people who, if you tell them, hey, you can manage your own money, they're going to be like, absolutely not. That's so dumb. And the reason they're saying that is probably because they're in the financial services industry, right? Of course, they want you to believe that you can't do this yourself. My definition of financial independence is having enough money so that you never have to work again, period. You can live whatever lifestyle it is you want. For some people, financial independence is going to be more expensive than others. That depends on your lifestyle. Financial coach versus financial advisor. Advisors are there to take your money and manage it for you, invest it for you. A coach is there to educate you how to manage your own money, hopefully for the long term, right? It's the exact metaphor of teaching you to fish versus selling you a fish. And then the other problem, of course, with the financial services industry is that it's very expensive. It's sneakily expensive, and they're keeping a third of your money, if not much, much more. So there's my definitions.
Yeah, I think that's important to have. This is my rank order of things, and you tell me your thoughts on it. I feel like if you're not doing anything with your money at all, like whatever your work is doing, the absolute bare minimum and nothing else, and the options are continue to do nothing or pay a professional to get you started in something, I think the get you started in something is a great place to be. I put myself in this camp. It's not that hard. It's so embarrassing, but it's not that hard to do it yourself. It took Stephanie knowing me for a very long, embarrassing amount of time, being like, hello, you can do it. You're paying someone else to do something you can do. What are you doing? My husband manages his own. I think it's really important to know what's going on with your finances. We talk about that a lot, but until very recently, I was having someone manage mine who was a great human, but you're paying for a service. And at a certain point, you have to run the numbers. Is this person and the amount they are earning off of your growth worth it to you? Are you cool writing that check to that person? Yes or no? And so when you're listening to this advice, you have to assess through what makes sense for you, and no shame in the game if this is not where you're at. But I am so excited to be on this side of the camp finally. I'm just curious if you have any other thoughts around that.
Yeah, I want to give an example because I work with generally very ambitious women, right? They're business owners, they're climbing corporate ladders, they're getting shit done, they're handling so many things at once, right? And these women will come to me and they'll say, hey, I heard of a high yield savings account 3 years ago. And I've had $100,000 in savings for 3 years, but I didn't know anyone else that had one. And so even though I knew it was the right thing, I just didn't do it. Or they say things like with their investments, right? I didn't understand every single piece, so I felt like I couldn't make a move. And that's such a female thing that I always hear from women, right? It's just like, I didn't understand the ins and outs of every single piece, so I couldn't make a move. But you're right. If the options are do nothing or invest with an advisor, great, invest with an advisor. But you have to know that it's like millions of dollars, right? So much money that they get paid. And it's not just the percentages that go to them, which is like 1% a year, maybe 2% with fees. They're usually underperforming the market like massively. Yeah, that's my soapbox right there. But I'm like, it is not worth it. Learn a tiny bit and then manage it yourself and save, keep more of your hard-earned money.
And I think there's something empowering about knowing about your stuff too. And this comes from me being a business coach. I'm constantly like, look at your numbers from the business side of things. But that also spills into your personal life because I see a lot of entrepreneurs who their business grows and grows and they don't have a personal financial strategy for that growth.
Right.
They're not growing with the business, or they just are continually looking at reinvesting in the business. But eventually, like, you have a life to live. And I would argue your business can be a great vehicle for some of these future growth opportunities. A lot of us look at business like, I need to grow the business big and then sell it, but that doesn't make sense for everyone. The business could be a great vehicle to then have additional profits that you can just divert into other assets that are going to benefit your personal life too. I'm curious, thinking of your clients who are business owners, what are some of the trends with them? Is it similar in your world?
They're so focused on building the business that they're not focused on like paying themselves first or putting money aside for future them, right? They're like, one day when I sell it or one day when my business makes this amount, then I'll start investing. And I'm like, you got to start investing with $100, right? You just got to get it going because it's time in the market, not timing the market. If you start at 18 with $50 like me, you're going to have millions of dollars. You didn't even have to put that much in there. That's the secret sauce. As a business owner, you have to have a line item in your expenses for paying future you from the very beginning, like day one, at least 5%. 10%, whatever you can afford. I know we're scrappy in the beginning a lot of times. Even whatever you can put aside, you just got to start in the very beginning.
I would argue the people who have less money and start that habit early are better off than those that keep saying, once we hit X, once we hit 10K, 100K, 1 million, like those are the people who are going to struggle because they start to creep in their spending, both on the business side, investing in things or purchasing things they don't necessarily need, and the
Yeah.
personal side, because it's a discipline problem.
Yeah. And I think too, like everyone hates budgeting with very few exceptions. And so I tell my clients, invest 20% and then ignore the rest, spend it on whatever you want. Mimosas, tiny dogs, do whatever you want. But if you're just investing that, you can literally be blind to everything else in your personal finance and be okay.
I want to ask a weird question. I'm sure someone's probably asked you along the way, but I've always been curious. Why is it money for you? Because I know your purpose and passion and your mission's bigger than that. Like, it leads to a life fulfillment thing, but why is money the vehicle for that, you think?
For me, when I was young, my mom didn't have money. I had an abusive stepfather and she was unable to leave him because of money. So I was like, money equals power, right? So that was just ingrained in a very young age. And I was like, I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be financially independent. No one can ever touch me. No one will be able to hurt me. Very young mindset. And so for me now, the thing that money gets wrong and, this like feminist money movement, right? The thing that they get wrong is it's very man hatery. It's very like we have to do everything ourselves. I'm out here being like, I love my man. He is amazing and he wants to take care of me and I have my own money. And that helps me show up as like a more whole human. Money does mean safety, right? At that basic level, money means safety. And then beyond that, money means self actualization. So it's like, who do you want to be giving your money to? How do you want to see the change in the world be impacted by the moves you make? What are the people you want to support? The causes, right? It's like, it's endless, the power of money. I am still working on my mindset away from scarcity money stuff, even though I am financially independent. I still have that little person in me that's, we're going to be a bag lady. You were always shifting those things. Now I'm more focused on giving back and my goals around money. I want to be able to support my mom. I want to be able to support my cousins. What's that going to cost? What do I want to see happen in the world? So much more motivating at this point in my life. Fear can be a good motivator, but eventually we need something more or we're just going to feel like shit and be rich. And that's not what we want.
I feel like that needs to be on a t-shirt. Don't feel like shit and be rich. But you're absolutely right. I'm same vibe when it comes to money and relationships, which I want to ask you about too. I am shocked how many couples do not talk about money in a very emotional way. Like, what is your emotional relationship with money? What is mine? But also, we're both rowing the boat. Why wouldn't we want to row it in the same direction? It's shocking to me how many of them have secret accounts, have one person who manages all of it, have one person who just digs their head in a hole and is, I don't want to look at it. So, tips, advice on how to navigate that, it's been game changing in our dynamic and relationship. And now it's actually fun. We enjoy, we do money date monthly, but now that we're both managing our own money, we're talking about doing it weekly, comparing notes. And here's what I'm doing here. Here's what you're doing here. I look forward to those conversations with Matt. So I'm curious what you think of that.
I love that for you. I would encourage as much talking as possible about getting on the same page. Trust me, I've seen it all. I used to work with people one-on-one and some couples. And sometimes there's two couples fighting with totally different worldviews and we're trying to find something that works. Sometimes I'm talking to the woman, the guy's in like the couch in the background, just shouting random shit at us. And we're like, okay. And then sometimes he's not present and he's do whatever you think is right, babe. Learn from Steph and then implement for the whole household. I want both people in the room, right? I want people to be aware of each other's risk tolerances and preferences and emotional things that they're bringing to their money. It's super important. I have close friends that are married or domestic partners that don't share money and keep things separate. I see a lot of fear in that. And I think at a certain point, to have a great relationship, whether it's with money or a partner, we have to move beyond that fear. We have to heal that and trust. When you heal stuff with love, you can heal stuff with money too, and vice versa. I find them in a very interesting, I don't know what to call it, but like a pillar of growth, right? Advocating for people talking as much as possible about money is going to heal your relationship and it's going to heal your relationship to money. So it's like a twofer.
And it just brings an awareness of how we're all different. Like what is important and high priority financially to me may be different for him. And instead of being like, we disagree and then heads in the sand, it's like you have to find a way to communicate that, be able to articulate that and say, ooh, I may disagree here, but here's where I feel like we should invest or purchase or whatever. It could be as silly as like literally today we were looking at power tools this morning and he was giving me his little shtick on why we need to invest in some power tools for our house. Am I going to use them? I might dabble, but that's a high priority for him right now because we have kid on the way, house projects. I see where he's coming from. And for me, I'm like, yeah, but I want to wallpaper this room. Instead of just privately going and purchasing it, we're having these conversations where we need to find a way to get on the same page. I encourage if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, we don't even talk about money, at least start. Because I think that it can be really powerful when you find a way to be compassionate and do it in a way that's like mutually productive.
I find that using faraway goals before we start money work, we talk about motivation. Before you learn
Mhm.
something, you want to be motivated. So if you start with something a little further away, what kind of life do we want to build? What's the like long-term goal? And then
Yeah.
work it backwards to 10-year goal, 5-year goal, 1-year goal. What are we doing this month? But if you start with this month, you get in the weeds and it can feel more combative. But if you talk about future goals and the life you want to build together, the big dreamy stuff, I think if that comes first, that's a good start.
We started with chickens and we worked backwards. We're not there yet. You dabbled, you talked about budget and people hate that. Not everyone, but a lot of people I talk to on the business front resist them, on the personal front. But I feel like you have a really interesting and simple approach to them. So what would be your overall advice when it comes to either creating one or having more awareness around one?
Yeah. The only reason you would ever implement a budget is two things. One is just to bring awareness, right? Because a lot of people have no idea what they're spending money on. And that in and of itself is a good reason to budget for a little while, just to know. Once you have awareness, you might find, okay, I'm spending this much on going out to eat with my friends. But what I really want to be spending is on these really fancy bar classes that I haven't been doing because I didn't think I had the money, but I do. The other option is if you actually want to change something, right? If you're like, okay, I know I'm spending too much on this thing. I want to be spending more on these other things. I want to take more vacations. Then you want to get in the weeds and start looking at your budget so that you can make changes. If you don't have one of those two scenarios, budgeting is unnecessary unless you want to be doing it. So when I work with people, I give them three options. One is getting in the weeds and really tracking every single dollar. One is setting high level goals for how much you want to be spending on things. And then there's the no budget, which is invest 20%, make sure you have emergency savings, spend the rest willy nilly, enjoy your life, right? And those are the three options. So not everyone needs a budget. It doesn't matter what you're spending money on if you're taking care of future you and you're meeting your goals. Don't budget for the sake of budgeting. Do it because you either want to bring awareness to something or because you want to make a change. That's really the only reasons.
I completely agree. And I love that simplicity of it because I think we do overcomplicate or we think it has to be really complicated. So we avoid. And you're
Yeah.
right. If you're content with where you're at, you're content with where you're at, which means you're probably not listening to this podcast. And we could really go deeper there. But yeah, no, I think that's so smart. So on the investing side of the house, someone's listening, their palms are sweaty. And they're like, okay, either I got some old accounts from previous jobs, like over here and over here. What's
Yeah.
some like real basic steps people can take to regain that control of their future selves?
Yeah. I mean, we have different tiers of how involved you want to get in, right? So I would say if you just want to listen to a podcast or something, that's where I'm like, dang, I really don't have a rep that I love. But I do love
No.
broke millennial books. Like I think the broke millennial books are a good start for basic personal finance. Beyond that, the obvious things are if you're paying a financial advisor, if you have old 401ks, right, from like previous employers, that's you got to do something about that. And if you're not investing currently, you need to find a place to invest, either an IRA or a 401k or a solo 401k if you're a business owner. You just got to be doing a little bit somewhere. So those are the main things. There's a lot of jargon in those statements, right? So it's hard to just be like, go open a 401k and invest in some index funds. And people are like, what does that mean? You do need some kind of a mentor. And the Broke Millennial books are a reasonable place to start. Beyond that, working with someone like me or a coach will teach you how to do it. And that's really rooted again in your education and making sure that you're going to be okay with the knowledge that you have. If you're not interested in any of that and you're like, absolutely not, then paying an advisor is better than nothing.
It depends on the seasons and needs and capacity you currently have as someone who's gone through it. It's not as much capacity as you think to set something up that's going to grow with you. Now, if you want to be, like, as Steph was saying, in the weeds and making more real-time changes and decisions, riding the boomer casino, as my husband calls it.
Oh my God.
If you want to take his approach, which maybe don't recommend at this point in my life, man, his growth is pretty insane, though, but high risk. All that
Yeah.
to say, depending on your ability to invest time and brain power into this will dictate
Yeah.
what decision is best for you. But don't let the overwhelm be why you don't do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's all of these elements of personal finance, and there's really different levels. There truly is a one and done solution to investing where you can set something up and walk away forever. No work. Yeah, literally no work. Similarly, when I'm working with people on their investments, I'm like, there are three options. Do you want to be in the weeds, choosing all of these different funds and keeping track of them? Do you want to just like set up a couple things and then let it ride? Or do you want to be the person that literally is like, I'm setting this up with you, Steph, now, and I'm walking away forever? There's options for that. So it's very limited in terms of the actual time you need to get set up. And it's not that complicated, right? Like they want us to think it's going to take forever and then it's super complicated and we should pay them all our money to do it. It's really pretty simple.
And why should people give a shit about this stuff? Do you have some case studies or examples you can share? I think there's the financial side, like the math for certain people, and you have some awesome case studies I know of those types of clients, but I also think there's an emotional and confidence thing that comes with really controlling your finances in your future. Do you have an example? Because I think some people don't realize what is possible for them.
Yeah. The thing that I tell people is the confidence, because with competence comes confidence, right? So there's nothing worse than having a bunch of money stuff going on in your accounts, understanding nothing about it, and then being like, how am I supposed to feel confident about what I'm doing when I don't understand anything about what's going on? And that's the norm. That's why people shut it down and don't look at it. So when you start learning a little bit, when you start talking about it in a group of women or like talking about it at all, you're going to get so confident. You're going to feel a huge shift. And then the other thing that I say is like, when you start doing this work, you're going to find more money to invest, right? Just by looking at things. It's like physics. I'm a physicist. Just by looking at your money, change is actually going to happen, which is why we say you don't even have to change your budget. You just have to bring awareness, because you're going to change that shit, right? You're going to see things and you're like, okay, I can optimize. Just bringing awareness to it, you'll probably start saving more. You'll probably start investing more. That means you're going to have way more money later, and nobody ever regrets investing more. They're always like, look what I did. This is really nice. So it's just a win-win, and it just doesn't take that much effort. Just do it.
So you also had mentioned that calculating this number is easy. What is that comfortability number? Do you have some advice? And what's that safety number? If you're listening to this, you don't feel financially safe, like you're a paycheck to paycheck, your business is really up and down. With like my top ramen budget, like I'm eating, but I'm not thriving. And then to me, the next level of like living. So that's kind of how I approach it. I'm really curious what your thoughts are. And then how do we get there?
We usually work backwards from the most important thing about planning for retirement or financial independence is actually your life afterwards. Are you living in LA spending $300K a year? Are you living in Costa Rica spending $20K a year? That's going to blow the numbers up in really different ways. That part of the equation is the most important part. How much will you actually need to live on after you say, I'm done making money? For easy math, right? Let's say you're like, okay, I think I could live on 100K a year, right? So we take that annual number and we multiply by 25. That's 2.5 million. That's your I quit and never have to work again number. So it's 25 times your annual expenses. That number is based on the 4% rule. So it's like the inverse of 4%. So the 4% rule, people talk about it. It's been written up the last 40 years and it still hangs on. Some people say it's 5 or 6%. That's how much you can live on each year of your nest egg and make it last. So if you have $1 million today, right, and you say 4%, that's 40K. I've got $1 million invested. I can live on 40K a year. For most of us, that's probably not going to cut it at this point. The alternative to this, like the ways that we can make it easier to retire, but also more complicated math, is by having multiple income streams, right? If you have a property that makes 50K a year and you want 100K total, now you only need 50K from investments because you have 50K from property. So now we do 50K times 25. That's only 1.25 million, right? So with those two things, you can retire at 1.25 million. So that's how we're doing our math. It's just 25 times your annual expenses. A lot of my clients are doing geographic arbitrage, right? Which is like you live in California, you make $400,000 a year working for a tech company with the one goal in mind of getting the fuck out of there and either starting your own business or retiring. It's like, okay, I do this for 4 years. Then I move to Colombia and I live on 20K a year like a king, or Coast Greece where my family is, right? Like my rent's $350 a month there and that ocean view. So I'm like, damn, okay. That's geographic arbitrage. That's what the FIRE community is famous for.
Yeah. And I think the small business world specifically, which is not everyone, but a lot of people in this podcast, like they don't know their business can be a strategic vehicle in helping get them there. If you're married and you communicate well with your partner and you find a way to do that, there's so many tax advantages and other things you can do when one's in business and one has that
Oh,
stable
yeah.
income. There's opportunity there. And I'm always just talk about it. Thank you for that.
So much opportunity. That's like a winning combination. The W income in the business. Oh, that's hot.
Exactly. So I kind of want to tie things up here, but I have 2 questions left for you. I'm just in my spicy era, inspired by your red jumpsuit. I would love to know, what are some things you're seeing, whether it's social media or people in like the finance-ish community, that hot takes, or maybe you're like, I actually disagree with it, or I have a hot take. I'd love to know if there's any out there that are currently just getting at you.
It's always me talking about crypto, where I'm like, crypto is not a fucking asset. Yeah.
Mm.
Everyone wants to know, what's crypto going to be in the future? Crypto doesn't meet the requirements for a currency because it's too volatile right now. And it doesn't really meet the criteria for an investment because it has no inherent value. It has what they call number go up technology, which is if you invest in it and I invest in it and these 100 people invest in it, the number goes up. It gets more expensive. It's bananas. And that doesn't mean you can't make money with it. So that's what I tell people. I'm like, all right, is it a real thing? Is it an investment? No. But does that mean you can't make money? You can make money gambling and doing sports betting. You can make money a lot of different ways that aren't investing. That's my number one soapbox. And you see these people claiming that they can teach you how to invest in crypto in a way that's going to make them super rich. Maybe you get lucky and make money, but it just doesn't have the fundamentals of personal finance. I'm like, oh, that one really gets me. I would say the other one is I hate the man hating money stuff with women. I had an Instagram person making my stuff like 5 years ago that posted some shit like that. And I was like, oh, damn. Like when I was in Seattle, that was the vibe I felt like. And damn, I hope we can grow through that, right? Because it's like we just went too far one direction. And now we need to get back to center here and bring the love back to money.
Yeah. And I think that's such a dangerous mindset too. And it's the wrong reason to want to be empowered. I think that the best thing we as business owners, as women, can do is be empowered just because we should. If you have a partner, awesome, leverage that together. If you're single, awesome, leverage that for yourself. You're never going to regret having more knowledge and confidence in your finances, regardless of your marital status. It's just a distraction and a waste of time to blame. So I
Yeah.
love how you said that. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. That's why we're here. And that's why you came and spoke, because there are people who are taking that approach.
It's not attractive.
Yeah.
It's also not magnetic, right? If you want to
Mhm.
be good at receiving money and building wealth and being wealthy, you have to have that good magnetism. And you're not going to get that by being anti everything and against the world.
Oh, I love that you said that. Okay. And then my last question for you was around the coaching side of things. So obviously you're doing this because you just love it and you want to help people. And I also want people to be able to self-filter. If you're vibing and you're like, okay, I think a financial coach is me, be really clear. Who is a good person for you? Where are they at in life and business? Not all your clients are business owners, but what is that perfect hell yes client for you? Just because I think people should know. And then
Yeah.
ideally they can come hang out with you more if they would like to find out more.
A lot of times what happens is people say that it was the right moment, right? It was the moment. I was ready to take my finances to the next level. A lot of times there are people that say, I've done a lot of things right. I've built a business or I have savings. Like I'm pretty stable, but I want to take it to the next level. And I'm just looking for that mentorship. You need someone you trust. You need to take all of the information out there, filter it down to you, and then have a mentor be like, yes, that makes sense for you. So that you can really like get it in your system, in your body, so that you really understand it. Otherwise, you're just checking boxes of, okay, go do this. And you're like, well, why am I doing this? Why is it right for me? Anyone who has a business or has some income where they're like, okay, I'm starting to accumulate a little savings. I know my money could be working harder for me. I know I could be making more with this. And I want to make my money work for me. That's it, right? That's the person that's ideal. And being willing to invest a little time. A lot of times, as coaches or business owners, we know investing in ourselves pays off. So it's the same mentality. Invest a little bit of time and energy into learning something that will serve you for the rest of your life. That's it. That's the mindset.
It still can land and set it and forget it. That can be the end result of working with you, but then they'll have at least enough of the baseline understanding to make that decision up front and then check in and make adjustments as needed.
There's nothing wrong with set it and forget it. It's just make sure it's set up right for you and then go live your best life.
But I'm sure you have people who are like geeking out and
Yeah.
like getting hard in the paint and like adding more complexity. So both can be true for the ideal Steph client.
And that's exactly why I'm a coach and not just a book writer, because
Yeah.
there's so much nuance in personal finance. You need someone to reflect back to you that what you're doing is right because they understand your reasoning, right? And then you're like, okay, it's solid. Now I feel more confident. I'm going to invest a little more because now I got more confidence. And it just like snowballs.
I know that was a lot of different directions we went, but I hope you listening, if nothing else, know that this is an area that you can gain confidence and you have some great resources all the way from reading a book to hiring a coach who can come alongside you. There's tons of different nuggets we dropped. And I just really encourage you to look at your stuff. Like it can be doing powerful things for you. And I would argue if you face your financial stuff, it has ripple effects in your business, relationships, and confidence. So many other things are impacted when you really start to face that stuff head on and really declaring where you want to take your life and business. So I'm all for it. Stephanie, I love you. Where can they find out more and stay connected?
The easiest way to find me is on Instagram. It's my name, Stephanie_Xenos. That's the best way to reach out and start learning more about money and maybe get your investing game on.
Awesome. And then I'll have it linked and spelled in the show notes. Xenos is with an X, by the way, Xenos. But she's amazing. Definitely go check her out. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your heart and just continue doing what you're doing. We're lucky to have someone like you in this space. So please keep showing up. Thanks for being a part of the Get Shit Done Rebel-ution. My hope is this episode sparked a fire in you, equipped you with some practical next steps, or inspired you to take action towards your goals. If it did, please help spread the word by sharing this episode or leaving a review on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're tuning in. Now it's time for me to hand over the keys and let you get shit done.